Alright, welcome back to the next part of this Unisaw rebuild. And today what we're working on is the electrical. And that is wiring up the motor and the controls and everything that makes the fun things happen in this saw. So as I've mentioned before, I am not a YouTuber per se. I'm just a woodworker with a camera that makes some videos here and there. So anyways, I kind of messed up the audio and I figured that I just had too much text to try to write out in subtitles, and it's probably going to make some people go a little cross-eyed. So I decided just to do a voiceover instead, and I'm just going to try to touch on the main parts of what's going on here. Also, I'm not an electrician. I know enough about it to get by, but this is not a how-to. This is just how I did it with the parts that I had. So in an earlier video, I showed the disassembly process of the motor and the various things. And you might remember that the motor was originally wired using solid 14-2 copper wire, just what you'd normally find in your household stuff. The thing I don't like about using a solid wire for anything like this on machinery is obviously the machinery is vibrating quite a bit. And sooner or later, that solid wire is going to start to crack. Much worse with aluminum than copper, but still, that said, kind of eliminate any potential gremlins or maybe even a fire issue just by doing it with a proper stranded wire right now. In this case, I'm just using a 10 gauge cap tire, which is a little bit overkill for a 1.5 horse motor, but all of the components in this system should be able to handle up to 5 horsepower, and it's quite possible that this saw will get one of those in the future. So if it does, this way we are already good to go with our wiring. So that part finishes up the output of the switch box, so essentially the power that's coming out of the contactor and going to the motor. And now we're going to wire up the input. This blue wire you see me wiring up in here is a jumper wire, and this is going in here because this is actually a 3-phase contactor. And for whatever reason, the way these are designed, if you are running them single phase, you need to bring a jumper over, or else I think that the contactor believes that there was a loss of power and it will deactivate the magnetic contact. I wish I could give a more detailed description as to why it works this way, but it's just beyond my level of knowledge on this. So if you do know, post in the comments and just explain how this works with using the jumper on a 3-phase box when wiring it for a single-phase device. Now that the jumper is in place, it's just wiring up the motor as you would normally, and 220 single-phase, so we've got 2 hots and the ground. So unfortunately, I just have to switch these around here, and I want the ground coming out on this end because that's going to be closest to the ground terminals. I'd move that terminal block if I could, but I don't see any way that that's easily going to be done. However, this is a pretty heavy cab tire jacketing, and I just put a little tape on there for just to help give some added cut resistance. So I think we'll be okay. So we're going to put them through this order instead. Okay, I feel better about that now that it's our ground wire that might be up against these terminals if anything were to kind of go awry in here. Now, some of you might have noticed that I am using another BX cable connector on this cab tire, and typically we would be using a gland connector, and I actually have one down there, just to the right of my knee down there. It's the black fitting. The reason that I'm not using a gland connector in this case is just because of lack of room in the box. That ground lug terminal block there that I can't move, it's so close to the input of that cab tire coming into the box. And as you might know, with gland connectors, there's quite a large amount often that protrudes into the device box, and that is part that adds as the strain relief. But because the gland connector protrudes a lot more into the box than the BX connector does, I had to go with the BX connector. I just could not fit the gland in there. Now on the other side, where there isn't a ground lug or a ground terminal block in the way, I will be able to use a gland connector. So you'll see one of those coming up in a bit. But I just wanted to address that just in case anybody actually noticed that part. Okay, here's what we got going on, which I think this is going to work out okay. I want to have a just conventional paddle switch. I use these switches on, I put them on pretty well everything. And I also want to maintain the mag starter and the overload. And I'm sure there's better ways of doing this. This is definitely not my forte. Now, if you have equipment that has a VFD, it already is quite a bit easier to add something like this because they have provisions already built in them for just about every type of input-output scenario. But a mechanical mag starter like this, we have a latching switch, and you turn it on, stays on, turn it off, stays off. And I'm going to place this in series with this contact that runs into the overload here. And I believe the way that should then work is that the overload should be able to open the circuit and shut off the saw, as well as the off button should be able to do that. And in order to start the saw, it'll require that the off button is switched to start, and then that the start button is pushed. And I think that'll give me a good combination of safety, and also might make it a little harder for curious fingers to possibly turn on a machine, just because these controls are relatively low down compared to something like the bandsaw where they're higher up on the mast. Alright, so here's that gland connector we were talking about, and right now what we're doing is we're going to be wiring in that paddle switch. To do that, I'm using a 12-2 cab tire, and so that's 2 conductors and a ground wire, all of which are insulated. However, because of the way that we're going to use this paddle switch, the one ground wire will be there for safety purposes, and one of the hot leads will be the input into the remote paddle switch, and the other hot lead will act as the output from the remote paddle switch, and that will then allow the circuit to be opened or closed in series with that on switch that we were talking about just a minute ago on the mag starter body itself. And like I mentioned, the purpose of this is I wanted to keep the safety aspect of the magnetic starter, I wanted to keep the protection aspect of the motor overload protector, and I also wanted to have the additional safety of a paddle switch. If you're not familiar with the primary function or safety aspect that a paddle switch brings, its primary benefit is allowing the operator to turn off the piece of machinery without having to remove one of their hands from the workpiece, and also without having to sort of break concentration. Depending on how much time you put on a machine, you may eventually run into a situation where that paddle switch potentially saves you from an injury. I've probably had a few of those situations, maybe a handful, over the past 10 years or so. One memorable one that comes to mind was I was cutting the inside corner out of a hardwood post. Sort of imagine a newel post for a stair, you know, it's like a 3-inch by 3-inch hardwood post. Got to cut the inside corner out of it. It's kind of a blind cut, and things started to bind and pinch partway through the second cut. And what was happening is the whole post was trying to ride the saw blade up and off of the blade. And of course, if you were to let that happen, as soon as the top of the teeth started to engage the uncut wood on that post, it would then most likely create a kickback, and it would shoot that post back or upwards, or generally something you would not want to be in the way of. And in that case, I was able to instantly hit the pedal switch with my hip while keeping both hands on the workpiece, and thereby reducing the pucker factor down to a mere inconvenience. Do you see what I see?
Yeah.
I see a problem. Do you see a problem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do see problem.
Well, that's not gonna work.
Yeah. We need to parent.
Silly dads.
See that?
Guess we're doing this again.
We're doing this again.
So now that I've owned up to the boss about my silly mistake, we're just going to move this box over a little bit, and such is life. Of course, I'm drilling and tapping this because this is going into the bottom of the previous owner's homemade rail, and I will eventually be swapping out that fence rail. But the reason that we are doing this right now is because it could be a month or two before I get the new fence rail. I actually found a new old stock Delta Unisaw or Delta Unifence rail. So that's fantastic. To the best of my knowledge, none of these parts are being manufactured by anyone anymore. But I was able to find one down in the States, and shipping was reasonable. And the seller was actually really quite nice and forewarned me that there could be a 2-month delay before this component even shipped out. And I'm not sure why that would be. I was just happy to be able to find one that I knew was going to be in new condition, or very good condition. And for the meantime, we'll use this fence, and it'll be better than nothing. So that's that. That finishes up the wiring of our Unisaw.